How about you, Amy? How's life?
Like it's good. Uh,
Yeah.
Will's gonna have a new friend in February.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Congratulations.
thanks.
That's exciting.
Yeah, that's my news.
That's big news.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's amazing.
yeah.
February what?
20th.
Oh, potential for a Pisces.
Ooh.
I don't know what the cutoff is.
I'm a Pisces.
I only know my own.
I'm a Pisces. We're good humans.
Okay, good.
How are you feeling?
Better now. I was feeling like trash for a long time, but
Oh. Not fun, but
yeah, otherwise things are good. Normal. Nothing exciting.
oh,
Right?
awesome.
Shannon. All right, let's see. Follow up. What can I talk about? Just there's a few different dashboard things that are pretty simple that Jen can just skip by. In terms of like what's coming up with Umbrella Project and some of the recent changes we've made. I think most of you receive the emails that we send to educators and things like that. If you don't and you would like to, I think one or maybe even two of you replied and said, actually, the thing that you like the most, even more than just me sending out updates too often, is just getting all the emails that go out like to the teachers so you see exactly what the teachers get. So if you'd ever like to get added to that, I can just make sure that you receive those emails. And so the dashboard and all the upgrades and the things that we've done with lesson plans seem to be received really well. And then the other thing that if you guys have the parents tag, which if you don't have that and you would like to see the emails that go out to parents as well, we've been sending out Dr. Jen's top 5. And so we'll talk about that. Oh, sorry, I need to let Lisa in. And so we send out Dr. Jen's top 5 every month to parents. That's now what we're using as our main like opt-in to bring people into our list and into our community. And so, yes, those are a few of the update things. And now Jen can take it away again.
Okay. I don't have the agenda open in front of me. Do you want to kind of go through it and
Sure.
and then I can just add in.
All right, so that's what's upcoming, and then we always try to, at your guys' request, come with to the meeting with a few different ways that you guys can get involved or things that are coming up so that you've got a bit of heads up. And so gratitude is October. So this month, just remember that if you are sharing anything on your social channels, or if you have like any old blog posts or articles or anything that you're sharing around gratitude, be sure to tag Umbrella Project so that Olivia can reshare that and share some of the content that you guys have. So that's a really simple way to get involved there. We also have one of the things that we are looking to do, which goes along with the Dr. Jen top 5, which I just mentioned, is asking if you guys ever want to be part of that. So as a way for us to be able to promote you again as an ambassador for well-being visits and things like that, and just being able to keep you guys front and center of what else is going on. And so what that would look like is that we would create a spreadsheet in our shared Google Drive like we have. And if you guys have any of you received the parenting emails with the Dr. Jen's top 5 PDF? So I was going to say, all of a sudden I was like, wait a minute. Do any of you actually know what I'm talking about? Because if not, I will pull one up for you. How does that sound? Give me one moment. I can do this real fast, hopefully, if Dr. Jen top 5. All right, so this is a resource. I think we've done 4 of them now. I'll open October and then I'll share my screen so that you guys can see it. And what it is a really simple way that Jen is able to share valuable information with all the parents in our, that are just on our email list. And so it's a collection of curated resources. So this is October's. So there's a bunch of different things it can include, and we mix it up every month. This one has a conversation starter all about what does it mean, and helping get into the understanding of the real impact for kids. Then here's an article with just like a short description to help encourage parents like, hey, if you want to learn more about this, here's this great article. And then there's an activity in this one about modeling gratitude for our kids, and then a book. So this was really great. This is Jen's basically like little book review and why she loved it and why it's been helpful for her as a parent, with a link to it. And then there's a video, The Brain's Journey to Resilience. And so we just thought, since a lot of you are parents and as you are doing umbrella project stuff, if you ever, I'll create a document, but then if you ever are running across articles or resources or videos that you think really fit with the umbrella project well and would be great for one of these, then we can highlight those resources as recommended by you guys as the ambassadors and be able to link back to you guys that way. So if that's something that you're interested in, or if you already are like, I got a list of like 10 books and I could write up quick book reports or whatever, just let us know. But we thought it might be a great way to get you guys involved and visible in a resource that's going out regularly.
What we can also send to you, I think, is the list of ideas. So it's not the same every time. It might be like a person to follow that has really great parenting content, or like I think we shared something when it came to Black Lives Matter, you know, like somebody that would be great to follow as a parent. It could be a video to watch with your kids. It could be, I'm trying to think of what other topics we have. A
I'll
kid's
pull
book,
up the template and I can put that in this shared document as well, so that all options are there.
or a piece of research that you saw that was interesting, like that one about that was in that one was about sleep out of UBC, and like reacting to positive and negative events. But if you write like a couple sentences about why I think it's meaningful, which Catherine actually has laid out very nicely for me too. She's like, please detail why you think this is important for parents, or please share what you did with this book. Then that would be awesome. Then we can start to like incorporate you guys into what parents see every month too on our list. That's that.
One of the other things that we have that we haven't talked about a whole lot is teacher mental health. And I know that Jen mentioned that might be something that Trent is going to be involved in this year, but maybe not. It might be parenting. But we do definitely have inquiries, especially this fall. We've got teachers emailing in like, hey, do you guys have resources about teacher mental health? Because a lot of the Umbrella Project is focusing on the kids building their umbrellas through the help of parents and educators and staff at schools. So that would be another area. If you've got something that you run across just in your daily life that's about teacher mental health, we are wanting to try to at least pull together a few resources for that, because it's a question that's coming up more in the inbox from people. So, and then other than that, it's the open conversation about Umbrella Project. So Jen, I'll let you.
The one other thing that Kate and I talked about today actually was the idea of virtual parent nights, which I think will be something that will come up this year. So we're thinking if anybody is interested, I know Amy, we chatted a bit about doing kind of the core Umbrella Project one, but we thought we might be able to offer a list of a couple topics. If any of you want to offer a virtual parent night, we can send it out to all of our schools and see what gets booked. So we thought it might be for whoever's interested to like create a little talk, whether it's parent self-care or the general Umbrella Project one, or that we could offer to schools if you guys are interested in doing those. So we had chatted with Amy, I think, about doing kind of the basic, like the main Umbrella Project presentation, but there's lots of other topics too that we can put together. So for anyone who's interested in doing that, or if you're not sure what you'd like to speak about, just email me or email us and we can put together a little list that we can send out to all our schools, because I think it's getting around that time of year where those will be something that schools will want to offer. That's the other thing. Okay, general Umbrella Project.
Oh, through the, no, sorry. the open conversation just about the anti-racism lens of the Umbrella Project and how that works with schools and everything. That point from our agenda.
Right. So first of all, because we had everybody kind of mentioned that they would like to discuss that further. So since our last call, I'd love to hear like what's come up for everyone. Have you guys have done any additional training in that space, or have any questions or thoughts come up that you think are important today? Laurie?
Well, I've been thinking a lot about, there's nothing really specific. I haven't done any trainings, but even since we put it on the agenda, thinking a lot about it in terms of how the project runs, and that really the delivery of things comes down to the teacher or the choice of resources that they're using and how they talk about it, I think. So in my mind, wondering, it's not an anti-racist program, like per se. Like, it's not, what I mean is that it's not like pitched as like, this is to teach your students anti-racism, right? And that's not the role of it. But then there's the flip side that like, it's not like the project's responsibility necessarily to address anti-racism directly. However, there's, it's everyone's responsibility to address anti-racism. So I was just thinking about it, originally wanting to consider if there was anything in my delivery or the way I talk about it that might be presumptuous or might be, assuming a white perspective without my awareness, like this kind of thing. And just one of the ones that really stood out to me was authenticity. And I talked a little bit about it with Kate, just in the sense that we're talking about authenticity, but I don't know how this would integrate into the project, but I feel like it's really important that maybe there's even a one-liner on the teacher's outline for like how they approach the skill, to recognize or be a lesson on it that some people can't practice authenticity because the ramifications could be deadly, right? Like that there are people of color where if they were to be authentic or to you could speak of indigenous people and their inability to be authentic with, the schools and stuff like that. So I'm not sure how it would integrate, if you think there's a place for it integrating, if it's a necessary conversation, but just was looking at it that way, that is there a way to like make it more direct for the teachers to also consider it in the back of their minds, or maybe in the front of their minds when they're talking about these skills?
Can you give me like another example of where you think that might come up?
Like other than authenticity?
No, like in the authenticity you said.
Oh,
like,
yeah. So for example, like
what school?
I've spoken to many Black friends who say they can't wear track pants or a tracksuit outside because of how people will respond to them. So they have to dress in a certain way so that the world responds to them in a certain way. Or people like indigenous people who they are unable to speak their language because for fear of their life historically, but also currently in certain, situations, more in terms of Black Lives Matter. But so like different cultures not being able to practice their cultural expression or eating the food that they want in certain environments for fear of persecution or judgment or certain like so, a lot of cultures feeling like they have to be inauthentic in order to fit in, and in some cases to save their lives.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yep, totally. Yeah, I'll think about, the first thing that comes to mind is really just doing a good second audit of what material is presented in, like what the videos are, what we've shared for authenticity, and making sure that it really covers a range of different experiences. I'm reading A Definitive History of Racism in America by Kendi. It's a thick read, but a good one. But one of the things that just came up in the book is the North American cultural push towards being more of a certain way, like wearing suits in the office instead of your, Indian pajama or whatever it is, and the perception of what all those different things are. I don't know. I think I have to go back and look at the resources. I don't know like what disclaimer would.
Yeah, it's a big topic. Go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't have an answer.
Here.
I think, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, I think the authenticity piece, though, you had posted something about authenticity versus attachment.
Yeah.
I think it's Gabor Mate, like his
Yeah.
clip. So I think it all relates. It's maybe just how it's perceived. So attachment can be your own family, but it could also be your community or your school or your classroom, and like finding that balance. I almost feel like it could be automatically included. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. One of the reflection questions within the curriculum, when people are thinking about stories that they bring to the table about authenticity, is like, why is this skill hard? It's the same with empathy. That's one of the common discussion questions that happen, I think, in classrooms is, okay, if all these skills were really easy, we would just do them all the time, right? Why are they hard, right? Why is authenticity sometimes hard? Why is it hard to be ourselves? And I think that's a platform for it to come up, like some meaningful conversation about the risks to authenticity, because I think it exists in the Black Lives Matter movement for sure, but in everybody's life, there's risks to authenticity, which is why it's a skill in the first place. So yeah, but I see what you mean by like encouraging students to be authentic, and is that potentially putting them in a position where they might then be at higher risk, I think is kind of the disclaimer that you're
I guess
about,
like
Lori.
zooming out, or even just, I mean, and again, this might not be the role of the Umbrella Project per se, but even for maybe teachers who aren't even aware that that could be an issue, you know, or to bring it to the attention.
That might be something that's good to flag even as just social posts during that time, or notes that we add into the educator call, for example, bringing to the attention why authenticity is hard, and making sure those conversations happen within classrooms and safe discussion groups of the risks of authenticity. Because I think that's something we talk about a lot with schools when I'm talking about the umbrella skills proper, is the reason there's so many of them is because it's not always easy for a student to rely on one skill. So for example, in some households, empathy is completely frowned upon. And so they go to school and they learn this skill, and then they go home and their parents are not that type of a parent, right? All they care about is stepping on the next person in line to get to the top, right? So learning how to use the skill in context when you can, and when like the skills that will best protect you in those situations. So that's something else about the Umbrella Project, is that there's lots of skills because we can't always use every one of them in every situation. As another maybe important point to bring up when it comes to authenticity.
Yeah.
Right. But when I really think about the content, a lot of it is like, you know, a transgendered person who's living their authentic life. And within any of those choices, there is always that layer of risk that somebody will not approve or perceive. Like always that authentic expression has some risk to it, I think, as well.
Yeah, I guess it's
important for kids to feel like they can do that, or that that school is giving them a reason to lean into that a little bit, or you know, that we value that expression of authenticity. I don't know, that's a tough one to think about what that one disclaimer would be.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's something like more of a point to be made during a professional development session, because it really comes down to the individuals delivering it, I think, and their own biases and experiences. And you know, in the same awareness of like the recent wave of Black Lives Matter, there's so much that like I'm doing that I didn't even know I was doing, that's, you know, potentially racist on a like system scale. So I'm not sure. That's why I just wanted to bring it up, see if anyone else had any like takes or thoughts about it. And
it makes me think of one of the questions in the umbrella assessment is, when I'm with my friends, it's easy for me to be myself. Like those kind of questions, even just as reflection points, right? If you're answering no to that, then why? And the exploration into your own experience of life and why you might feel safe or not feel safe being yourself with the people.
Yeah, well, I guess the conflict for me is that like you're encouraging people to find examples of, like, we're just honing in on authenticity, but finding examples, seeing stories, and the idea is to practice it yourself in the areas that you can.
Yeah.
But in many cases, for many people, those real life threats aren't going anywhere. So it's that like conflict, I guess. I mean, I can, like, we could flip it. We could say integrity. Integrity is a great skill to talk about, like to do what you know is right and call out something that you see as racist, right? And like you can stand up, and there can be a lot more like a proactive anti-racist like intervention sort of with some of these other, like many of the other skills. I guess authenticity stood out to me more because of the risk, like the true real risk that I think as a white person, I haven't always recognized for many people that exists.
Right. And at the same time, within that risk, like that's part of the problem. Like authenticity is almost at the foundation of the problem that exists, where people can't authentically show up as themselves without there being a risk, right? So in teaching authenticity as an important skill, maybe that also helps to highlight some of the importance of seeing people authentically instead of them having to conform, right? And I would say that's kind of at the core of the problem too.
Yeah, for sure.
Which is why it's a bit of why it could be a risk, is because in expressing that right now, maybe the world is not a safe place for people to always authentically express whatever they want to express. I now also remember that in the authenticity curriculum, one of the biggest things that we highlighted about authenticity is the idea that it's not about just doing you to the extreme of you and not caring about what other people think. Like it's the interplay between being able to be yourself in the context of the world that you live in as well. So if you want, like if you go back and look at it, I think it might be worded in a way that already buffers a little bit of that self-expression piece, because what's happening a lot in teenagers, excluding like Black Lives Matter and any of that stuff, is the independence that goes to like this extreme loneliness, because you're so authentically you that you do it in exclusion of being able to accept other people for who they are, because they're different from you, and who you are is very unique and individual. But it becomes this, actually that's quite a conversation piece right now when it comes to teenage well-being, is like those people who have one or two friends because they've excluded everybody else in exchange for authenticity, which is like, again, Karen, back to kind of that like attachment versus authenticity piece. So I do, now that I'm really thinking about how it's worded in the curriculum, there is that piece that sort of buffers just authenticity at any cost to, yeah.
So I wonder then if there's like, I mean, I'm not on top of this, so I don't know. I know that some of the schools I've been talking to, that Black Lives Matters and anti-racism is an important topic when they're coming back this year after this past summer or 6 months and stuff. But so I don't know if there are programs that they're latching onto, or if they're just talking about it in their schools. I wonder if there are popular programs, like if this could, you know how you've aligned it with like the curriculum and some of the other popular programs, if there's one that stands out, then like aligning this with what people are using.
Mhm.
Because it's a great tool to address it, right? It just, like I said, I think it comes down to whoever's standing in front of the students and how they're using it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's a good point. I'm not familiar with any curriculums right now that have come out. Do you guys know of any that you've seen that specifically address anti-racism?
Yeah.
Not for schools.
Oh, I think
Lots of stuff
mostly
that's
they're,
come out for other things, but I haven't seen a school program. So
from what I've learned so far, is a lot of the exercises and activities that they're using are coming from School of Mental Health Ontario. I always get it wrong, but you know what I'm talking about. Because they do address it within, you know, whatever activities or resources they're supporting. And then just observing my own kids in the school that they're at, I'm seeing a lot of what I'm reading about being now played out in their school setting. So that's what I've observed. I haven't seen any sort of specific program being integrated into schools. It's more like they're weaving activities and resources into the existing structure of what they're teaching. That's what I've seen.
Yeah, most of the resources I've seen have been for teachers too, to address more of like the systemic level problem rather than explicit teaching in class. So Waterloo Region School Board sent out a great resource that had a couple like key pillars that they wanted teachers to do. And within that, it addressed equity and inclusion, like delighting in your students and being a good listener, and, you know, like the kind of those principles that I can send that to you, Laurie, if you're interested in looking at what they sent out. But I've seen attacking sort of that level of it.
Maybe it would be neat to like, even as like it could potentially be a marketing thing, but like a brief you know, like here are the skills and like how they can be used to support a discussion of anti-racism in the school.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like to show how, like, if schools are really big about like really exploring these ideas with their kids, then maybe like we could show how these skills contribute to the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Just a thought that came to me now, but
Yeah, for sure. I'm sort of, oh, sorry, go ahead, Karen.
I was just going to say, I think it depends on the school. So I'll just give you an example. My kids were going to a school called Harriet Tubman Public School. We live pretty close to the church where Harriet Tubman attended when she had been part of the Underground Railroad and was bringing slaves here. There's a statue of her. There's a larger population of Black students at that school. So it seemed like as soon as that school came to be and had that name, there was a lot of focus on her legacy, anti-slavery, Black lives. And then now my kids are at a school that is predominantly white, and it seems like it's like it doesn't exist there because there aren't any students of color, or not to say none, but many fewer. So it's a little bit disappointing to see it not being addressed as much, but I think it's almost like dependent on the school community.
Right.
That's just one thing I think might
For
be.
sure it is. Yeah. I just, out of sight, out of mind, I think is a big problem that we have.
well, and I'm wary, like, you know, I don't expect a like concrete solution to come out of this discussion today, but you know, I'm also wary that like we're all white and I don't want to like, you know, fall into like the savior complex or like make a decision assuming we know what will help when we maybe don't. I just think, I guess it's an important conversation to have.
Yeah, that is kind of one of the things that comes to mind when I think about trying to recommend how to use all the skills from an anti-racism lens, is only that it's like, I'm not sure that I'm the expert in that space to be prescribing something. I think like the one thing that I know that we can prescribe is making sure that kids see more diversity in the materials that are presented. In to your point, Karen, of like, it's just like the diversity tracker. It's not just about making sure that all the students in your class are represented. It's, you know, that your 90% of your white students see lots of diversity in the material that's presented, even if that's not right in front of them right at that moment, right? Eventually they're going out into the world. And it's better if their minds are conditioned to see all sorts of different people doing different types of things, right? From race and gender and sexual orientation and everything, right? So
that might be a good point to emphasize then. My impression, I did look at the tracker and stuff and read through, but originally my impression was that it was kind of to like cater to the class a little bit, because we talked about the strength of the research saying that, you know, you seeing examples of people that you can relate to strengthens your own experience. But so to also put on that other piece that even if there's nobody in your class like that, that it's the importance or value of having those other stories as well.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I had an interesting experience at my kids' school where I was pulled into a meeting that I probably shouldn't have been pulled into, but I think the couple parents that pulled me in had another agenda that they wanted to like use the umbrella project to push something that they were trying to get across. Anyway, it was a very vocal group of parents about how the school was run. And but partway through, it came up that there was a lot of discussion about whether they should fly the gay pride flag. This was before the like issues this year with the Catholic board here. And the mom was like, well, you know, like some parents don't approve of that. So why, like, if we're flying that flag, shouldn't we be flying like the flag for every single thing? And I was like, you know, I truthfully think it's a huge disservice to kids to not put those things directly in front of them, even if that's doesn't come up in their class, in their school. Eventually they're going into a system where they are going to be inundated with people of all different sexual orientations, all different. If you don't make that a normal part of what they're seeing, I think you're doing your kids a deep disservice to make that something outside of their normals. So I think normalizing as much as we can is a great thing to point out with the tracker that we have, right? Just to make sure that they see everybody's experience as a normal human experience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm just looking at the skills here to see what comes up. Yeah, I think that's a good point. So the diversity, maybe like the way in which the project can, you know, be anti-racist is by promoting the diversity and the sharing of stories and all kinds of different stories.
Yeah.
One of the things that I pulled up while you were talking about authenticity specifically is the curriculum. And there's 14 videos linked. This is just an example of a skill. I haven't looked at the authenticity videos yet, but there's 14 videos and one of them is of a white male. So just to give you an idea, literally the other 13 are people of different sexual orientations or different colors. And like 10 of them are all different, like spectrum of color, and almost half of them are Indigenous. So that's just like an example of like with authenticity, the videos that they're going to be seeing do not support a all white perspective, right? Like, so the teachers, unless they're going to show stuff not in Umbrella Project, there's not the opportunity for them to take authenticity and show videos of only white people doing certain things, right? Like, so that's just...
And that makes sense. It supports the conversation that like the white male experience hasn't had a challenge with authenticity.
Right. And the white male video is a big Viking giant who's huge and doesn't fit anywhere. So, you know what I mean? Like even that, it's like, it's a white male that doesn't fit into the normal, right? So anyway, I just thought that might be helpful to the conversation.
Because I do think like in terms of long-term impact, Dave's pointed this out to me a couple times in the last couple of months, but like change is slow in most cases. In order to make a really big difference, you're looking down the road quite a while. And I think for like an Indigenous person to feel okay about expressing their true, authentic self, that starts with what we see you know, every day in our experiences. And the more of that you see, the more as you get older, you're a person who just sees that as normal, right? Like those pathways get built that, oh, that's normal too, right? That's authentic too. That's, it doesn't need to be all what the stereotypical white male world looks like. So I do think in doing that, like authenticity is a powerful skill, but I made a note to make sure we include some notes in the educator call and through social media during that skill to really acknowledge why authenticity is hard too for students now, and to make it, to talk about that. I almost think we can make a little video of, we could interview some different students about, you know, just little clips of why they find authenticity hard at times as something, or we do that a lot in classrooms now. We recommend they like pass videos around the school and build on it, right? So that everybody gets to watch like a kind of virtual assembly. But that would be a good one to talk about, I think, why that feels hard. So
Yeah, to share with the school for sure.
mm-hmm.
Well, thank you for like indulging me in this conversation. And I was hoping too that just, if, I mean, part of it was from my own, like wanting to make sure that I'm not delivering it in a way that is perpetuating any racism. So
Mm-hmm.
if anyone else sees or hears any things that might be problematic or whatever, please help me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm always on the lookout now for those things. What about in practice? Do you guys have any issues in practice with anything?
I have a patient, a person of color who I was recently doing, like I ran that anxiety workshop at the beginning of COVID.
Mhm.
And she was really, really grateful when I brought up the idea of weathering and the extra challenge and stress and anxiety that women deal with, and that specifically women of color deal with. She was like relieved. You could almost like see her and exhale, like that I acknowledged it, because clearly it's something that she's experiencing.
Mm-hmm.
But it hadn't been a big part of a public conversation. So
Mm-hmm. That's good.
Yeah.
One area I feel in practice somewhat unequipped to deal with is like transgender and some of those things from a medical perspective. I don't know if any of you guys did we get any training? Like we certainly didn't get any training in that in school. Yeah, Karen?
I'm trying to think of her name. She just recently died, actually. Mahalo, is that Dr. Mahalo? Did she not come to your class and just do one course on treating transgender populations and making your forms more more open or more inclusive to either people of that don't like that are non-binary, or people that are like different, you know, so rather than having like he or she pronouns, like more having a blank, like which pronoun do you prefer, and having things that made it on your website that made it clear you were like an ally to people in the LGBTQ community. It was just like a 2-hour lecture, but she went over a lot of those things.
I don't remember that. When did you graduate?
Oh, yeah.
I graduated 2014, but I would have taken that with like the class of 2012. I don't know. I was like
I
all
remember
over.
that. Maybe we were in the same class. I do.
Is her name Frida?
Mahalia
Frida
Freed is her
Mahalia?
name.
Mahalia Freed. There, thank you. So I've got it all mixed up. But she talked a lot about that, or like how you could make your practice more.
Yeah, cool.
Focus
I
that way.
graduated in 2004, so I think I missed the wave of when people were talking about any of that stuff.
2005, so I'm with you. I'm like, yeah, we're seeing it.
Yeah. So that's an area where I feel underprepared, I think, to have meaningful conversations in that.
I think she. Sorry, go ahead.
Did like an audit of our forms. We had someone come in who, like, I think they were a student who was studying this, and they did an audit to make sure that our forms were sensitive and had all that like gender pronouns and all that information. But that's it. And I don't like, I find that if that person then came into my office, sure, my forms are nice, but we didn't learn like how to handle their hormones or how to handle like different approaches
Right.
to their health. Like our forms are nice, but that's kind of it.
I think it was a lot of like language. So if you had like a female born patient that identified as male, they may wrap their breasts, but you would still want to do a breast exam, and you would be concerned with like compression and lymphatic flow and drainage. So it was talking about, but like it was more about the wording. So instead of saying I need to do a breast exam, which would be insensitive, it was like I need to examine your chest, or I want you to use this chest oil, or I want you to spend some time in the day without wrapping. Or like it was more just in wording you would use. Like you would still say, I think it's still important to assess your hormones, but you would maybe just change the language.
Right. Okay.
So that it was inclusive and not offensive. I think
Yeah,
it
there's
was
a big learning curve there. I find, I mean, because the way we were trained, right, doesn't consider a lot of this, right, in the language that we learned to speak with. So
Yeah.
it's a big learning curve.
It's definitely worth reviewing. I have not done my forms with that lens of sensitivity, or the curriculum for that matter with that lens. Like I don't know how many they or pronouns, you know, like I wonder if it's fairly gendered still in language, just based on how my brain would work and write.
Well, but you can't leave out the pronouns of like he and she, because some people identify, you know, they need to be represented too.
Right.
But I did recently, or like in January, because I had a patient, my first genderqueer patient, and you know, had to do as much learning as I could very quickly. But it inspired me when I set up my online forms here during COVID. Like my intake forms don't even refer to, you know, women's reproductive health or men's health. I went so far as like, if you have a uterus or have had one removed, you know, what were your periods like, and what, like, if you're that kind of thing, because
I do not.
Women's health, and then
right. I still have women's health on my form.
Yeah. But it's new. Yeah, it's a new development.
I decided early on, though, not to have one of those forms that included like reviews of systems, because sometimes I felt like you were asking things that didn't apply. I often just use the intake to gather that information, and then it tends to have like a more natural flow rather than having like, do you have a uterus? Did
right. Okay. Well,
I'm not saying I'm always doing it right, but I'm trying to not lead things a certain direction as much, and letting the patient more, like, let the story navigate the health care plan. I guess. Does that make sense?
Amy, who did your form audit?
Can't remember. It was a student who was in midwifery. Like we have a lot of students do their placements, their community placements here.
Right.
And so I think it was a couple of years ago. So I think she's a midwife now. So it's not someone who does it for a living.
Okay. Awesome. I think I know somebody in town who would be a good fit for that too. So
yeah.
Cool.
But we have lots of nursing students come through who need community placements, and we're having lots come through right now where they can't shadow us anymore, and they have to do a project. So it might be something worth putting out there to get done for free. That's how we get all of our grunt work done.
Get a preceptor.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I'd be interested to do a good review of all the clinical forms, just make sure that they're all gender friendly. Is that a term? Gender friendly? No.
The other thing that we did with this student was, I don't know if you run any, like if you have pronouns in any of your workshop titles, but she changed the name of a lot of ours. So we used to have like mom and baby yoga, and now we have parent and baby yoga. We used to have like mummy tummy workshops, and now we have restore your core. So it's not any name, like it's just neutral for everyone.
Right. That's good.
I don't think the Umbrella Project ones would be very gendered though.
No, because it's meant to address
Yeah.
Variety.
a wide variety. Yeah.
Yeah, but just something to think of, like naming things in the future.
Mm-hmm. Even in presentation, Glennon Doyle just posted something about how offended she finds it when teachers say, you know, are your mom and dad home? Bring them to the computer, because it's all right. They now interact more directly like that, as opposed to like your adults, or assuming that people have a mom and dad, right? So terms like that, so, or your grown-ups is what she said would be a good alternative when you're talking about people who care for them, your grown-ups, as a good alternative.
That's the only thing that I can think of when I think about the Umbrella Project, actually, is that we do talk about our parent community, and we use parent a lot.
We do.
But that's a bigger nut to crack, that one. A lot of changes will have to happen in order to adjust that, I think.
Could it just be caregivers?
Yeah,
Or-
and in
or is
some
that
cases,
too-
we have referred to parent or caregiver. But
Yeah. But
Yeah,
like when you're shortening it for a title or something,
yeah.
parent community or parent worship, yeah. It's a good flag for us, though. We should think about what language might incorporate everybody.
Mhm. With respect to sort of using he and her, or him and she and all that, I think we're pretty good, because we already are trying very hard to work the language so that we incorporate child or children in a sort of neutral way. And as a result, we don't often use
Here, yeah.
A parent is one that I was thinking of.
Mhm. Okay. Any other diversity inclusion stuff that's come up for you guys? If you ever see anything that goes out or you think might be sensitive to a community, please let us know, and we'll work towards screening for that as much as possible. Okay. Catherine, do we have anything else that was on our list of things that we want to get to today?
That is everything that we had pre-selected.
Just as a quick summary, so Gratitude Month, if you guys want to share or post anything about gratitude, that'd be awesome. The top 5, Catherine will send you a document about that. If you see anything that you think is a great resource that you want us to share on your behalf so we can get your name out there, that'd be great. And then think about if you might want to host virtual parent nights, and if so, what would
Caregiver nights.
virtual grown-up nights?